Hello, Broderick.
Michael.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, man.
We've been playing email tag.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been a bit all over the place here. But I am good. I normally honour everything.
I do appreciate you giving me a few minutes, mate. It's a great pleasure to say hello.
Yeah, good, man. It's nice to meet you.
And you're, I was going to say you're a very busy man, but this year everything seems to be happening. It's I don't know how you can keep up with all the work you've got happening with basically the Dingoes project and your new CD coming out earlier in the year and the big combo album being reshoot. Everything's happening.
Yeah, well, I don't drink. That helps. Alcohol is the musician's curse, probably. I haven't drunk for 4 or 5 years, so I tend to keep things pretty well under control. The big combo thing I don't have a great deal to do with, and the Dingoes thing is very little of my time too.
Well, let's talk about Unknown Country then first up, because for me your recordings in the last few years, this is a real high point. It's a lovely CD that has a nice thread that tells a story through it.
Yeah, well, I've been running through a bunch of albums since the 90s, starting with one called My Shirley on Newmarket or something. I started moving in a certain way, and I started moving away from what everybody else was doing, and moving out of town and trying to look inside myself, which is kind of very, very difficult to do in Australia because of the small population. You generally tend to have to follow a trend or play the game, and so I decided, well, bugger it, I'm not going to play the game. I'll end up with no money, but at least I'll have done an honest bunch of work. Yeah. So I did Shirley, then I did 2 for the ABC, one of which was Songster, which again followed on after Shirley. Then I did another one called Too Easy, again on Newmarket, which again followed after that. So there was kind of they were all moving towards Unknown Country. And Unknown Country out of the 4 was the one that I worked most closely with, Matt Walker, who I have the greatest respect. And he's a bit like me too. He's like a cantankerous, younger version. And he follows his own star rather than, have dreadlocks and sing about being on the beach and just playing rhythm on the, percussion on the end of his guitar. He doesn't do all that stuff.
But he's a fine musician indeed.
Yeah, he's really well respected overseas. Probably more so than here. A lot of the public just don't quite grab what he's doing, what other musicians do. He's one of them, yeah.
He's been involved with music for you for quite a few years now, hasn't he? Was it way back was Too Easy the first album that he worked on with you?
I think it was My Shirley.
Right.
The first one he did, going back, 16 years. And every album he did, up until recently, I'd be co-writing, maybe, doing 2 or 3 sets of lyrics for him as well. And I just have the utmost respect for him, as other musicians do too. He's just, like a lot of guitarists, they'll pick up a guitar and they'll play a lick. And you go, well, that's fantastic, but I've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
With him, you don't do that way. He plays it musically. So I pick up an instrument and work out the musical setup of the instrument and play it accordingly that way, rather than something that he's learned off a record.
In my humble opinion, you do the same thing with a harmonica. There's lots of people that will pick up harmonica and think, I've heard that before, but Broderick Smith you have your own style, and there's an Australianness, I can't explain it, about the way you play.
I wasn't, for a long time I haven't listened to licks, picking up licks. Paul Butterfield said it quite clearly before he passed away, that he can't play like Little Walter, for example, who's the top of the Electric Chicago Blues guys, I guess. And he said he couldn't play that way, so there was no point in trying to. Plus, it's already been done before, so what's the point twice? And so the third one is you try to get your own thing going. But I do confess, when I was young, I was influenced by people. As I got older and older, I became less and less influenced by them. And it's interesting you say that. I have a big note in here, but I have a good friend, Mickey Raphael, that plays harmonica with Willie Nelson. And I sent him the album, and he said, I'd recognise you're playing anywhere.
There you go.
And I thought, oh, gee, okay, I must be on the right path. You know, it might not be making me the best, but at least people go, oh, that's him, you know, for good or bad.
But that is a lovely thing that people can instantly recognise your sound.
Yeah, and like I say, for a long, long time I haven't listened to much music. I tend to be more of a reader and watch movies and like the Bush. And so occasionally I get hooked up on somebody. I had like that guy Chris Whitley. I went crazy over him for some years, 20 years back. So I bought everything he did. And I like other things. I like MGMT. You know that song "Time to Pretend."
Yes, yes.
I'm feeling good. I really like that song. And I like the oddest things occasionally. Weird things like "Oops, I Did It Again" by Britney Spears. I thought that's a cool little pop song. Oops, I did it again. You know, it's like Papa Don't Preach. They stop you and you go, well, gee, there's an original thought here for a change, you know.
You've just got to search out those little bits of originality.
Yeah, well, yeah, and everybody's one man's meat's another man's muck, you know. So what you like and what I like might be different.
Indeed.
So you just follow your own path, yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about Garth Hudson as well. He's an interesting character to have playing on the album.
Garth Hudson, as he's sort of a peripheral friend of us. He played on Five Times the Sun, one of the Dingoes albums. He was a friend of the producer was a friend of the band and Neil Young, and that was the kind of circle that we were sort of moving in the States. And Garth came down and played on the Dingoes album. And then he also, some years back, Karen Tolhurst and Greg Quill from Country Radio, because Greg lives in Canada now, and is like one, if not Canada's top rock writer, he was. They did a tour, Karen and Greg Quill, and they asked Garth Hudson to come and tour with them. So again, there was the connection. And then when I was doing this album, I thought, why don't I write to him and see if he'd be interested in playing on it, which he was. But you've got to remember, he's kind of like a Canadian. He's which makes him a Commonwealth kind of buddy. He's ultra eccentric, and he doesn't take on music things just for the fun of it. You got to audition for him. You know, you're working with a master. You say, he gets a lot of people's noses out of joint probably, but I accepted all that. And you can't exactly tell him what to play. He'll play what he wants to play.
So what did you have to put to him audition-wise to get him to say yes?
I sent him some of those aforementioned albums, tracks from them, and I sent him a rough of all the songs we wanted to record, plus the lyrics, which he asked for, and then he agreed to do it. And he did it for, really like a friend's price. It was a mate's rates. And he's happy to play on all my albums, so I've got him sort of sitting there, and the area that he works, which is roots music, archaic roots music, is the best in the world.
Indeed, indeed. And Shannon Bourne?
Well, Shannon Bourne's another one. He's the opposite of Matt in a way. Matt uses like an old profile guitar made in, Upper Korea, and he just, he slaps steel I think he found on the tip. So he kind of uses bits and pieces, whereas Shannon's got all the best gear and is a pedal freak and is a beautiful, beautiful player, but a different kind of player than Matt. And Shannon tends to look up Matt a lot. Matt being older than him, because Shannon's only 30.
A whippersnapper.
Yeah, a whippersnapper. So they were a good combination to have, where you have the Matt, the idiosyncratic, unique kind of player, earthy, musical, and then you've got Shannon, who's the pedal meister and the amp meister, the guitar meister, and is also a beautiful player, but perhaps a little bit more lyrical or something than Matt. They complement each other, yeah.
Indeed. I can only encourage people to, because the profile that maybe the Dingoes have had this year in Australia, that people may have rediscovered Broderick Smith and go out and rediscover some of your solo stuff, because there is some magic music, or a lot of magic music there indeed.
Well, thanks, Michael, but I have a strain of people that do that anyway. The Dingoes thing, look, it doesn't really matter much. I mean, most of the audience had got to that point where they all had short cropped grey thinning hair and jean shirts and leather jackets, and they all kind of look the same. because I'm describing them like that, that's what I look like, you know. so it didn't. Dingoes thing didn't really affect me much at all. If you're talking about the industry, what I found recently that was kind of interesting is when I went to the Arias for that award thing. I don't like going to award things normally. There were lots of old friends of mine there. It was full of them, and they're lovely people. But when I was sitting there, it was like I'd arrived on another planet. Because I come from the roots side of the coin, which is a less financial side of it, but it doesn't have all that pop hoopla. So but people were coming up to me saying, "Boy, I haven't heard of you for years. What have you been doing?" And I thought, I've been playing constantly in the roots thing, but you guys, although I love you, you know, you don't understand there's another world past South Melbourne.
They have the blinkers on and don't see it, indeed. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and then they'll talk about acts and stuff that I don't even know who they are, or I care. I don't care, you know. And so it was, yeah. So the Dingoes was sort of in that area, and it was interesting for me because there's only 20 million people in this country, and I try to stay as true to myself as possible. But unfortunately, because of the size of the population, you do occasionally have to do something you don't want to do to get on TV. You know, like gambling with the stars or whatever they have, you know.
Well, funny you mention that because I recall seeing you on the Rock Whiz program, and you really seemed to me that you were having a ball.
Well, they asked me. It's funny enough. They've been asking me for a few years, Brian, to go on Rock Quiz.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to go on it. And then I had the album coming out, and I thought, well, this is kind of a nice time to go on it. And they paired me off with the young girl Patience. Mm-hmm. And then I suggested we do that Time to Pretend song, MGMT, together, because I loved it so much. I didn't want to do anything from my past at all. I didn't want to come on and be one of those, I won't say their names, but those kind of folks. I wasn't that desperate to be on it. And when you're not desperate to be on it, you can be as grumpy and as crazy as you want. It doesn't matter if they say, we'll never have you on the show again. You go, cool. You know what I mean?
That's fantastic.
It makes for better TV and radio anyway. You know, rather than playing the game, you know. You know, I don't know what ones I'd like to be on, you know. I think.
Just quickly, one of the back on the subject of the Dingoes. The one thing I took away from seeing you guys play, or the two things really, was how much you seemed to enjoy each other's company after so long, to be on stage together.
We had a lot of fun in that sense because we'd always pretty well enjoyed each other's company. Some people have lifestyles that you might not really want to go near, but then you just stay away from it, but you still like them as people. And the Dingoes was interesting, like when I play the Backsliders and a couple of other outfits through my life where everybody's really well read, so you can sit around and discuss a lot of stuff. It's not, you don't sit around discussing basic things, you know. You just don't do that. So you can talk about different stuff, intelligent stuff, like the school teacher, Boyce, the bass player, he stayed in America, went to Yale, I think it was, or Harvard, and got a degree, and he's a school teacher, teaching Latino kids. He teaches poor people in Maryland or somewhere. So there's some good hearts in there, you know what I mean?
Indeed. But the most endearing thing I came away from the gig was, and not having seen the band because I was too young to see the band perform in its heyday, but was your patter between songs was as entertaining as the music. You made so many references to the young people in the audience and how, you know, the drugs are much better back in your days, etc. And the audience were in stitches.
Well, for years I worked with just a piano guy, and we did this weird thing where we kind of did Lenny Bruce, Robin Williams, the Goons, all sort of tossed in, and social commentary. And I did that a lot with him playing piano, and we do songs by Randy Newman and all different kinds of stuff. So it wasn't a Vegas act, but it was it was in that. So a lot of times I found things that cheesed me off. I'd say it on the mic, and I'd see people nodding in agreement. And I realised that what was happening out there was that a lot of times the public don't have somebody on stage saying what they think. and also the public are not stupid. There's a big thing in the media, especially the commercial media, that works on the premise that the public are absolute idiots, and they're not. They're just busy, and they're somewhat ignorant because they are busy. But they ain't stupid. You know, which sometimes politicians find out much to their horror when they're voted out.
But a lot of musicians these days, in particular, seem to be too afraid or too shy or something, not to really even engage on that level with their audience. They hardly talk to the audience as such, and I really like that about acts in general, and you're a master of that.
Well, I've done it for so many years, and I enjoy it, and nothing phases me. You can scream. Somebody yelled out the other week, way out west, and I said that was 30 years ago. It was a woman, and I said, what were you doing 30 years ago? And she said, I was washing cars, and I said, well, my car's out the back, wash it, and I'll sing the song for you. And we play Williamstown, and I've learned out a lot of instant repartee. So a woman, and when we were playing the Williamstown RSL, yelled out, Willie's the best. Quite loudly, and I instantly said, a lot of girls say that. I bang straight into it. So, and I don't mind if I embarrass myself. I did a show once with Mick O'Connor, the keyboard player, and we'd been on for an hour and a half. And he said, Brodo, and I said, what? He said, we just only played 8 songs. I went off on a tangent, but the audience loved it.
That's right. It doesn't actually matter. It's the entertainment. It's the actual engaging with the people.
Yeah, you have to engage. Well, I do anyway, and I think a lot of people did over the years. I mean, Bob Dylan in the pieces mumbled and talked and did little Chaplin-esque things. A lot of them. Man, I don't want to go down that line, because I start getting grumpy again.
I just wanted to quickly finish up by asking about the Big Combo, because that was my era. I grew up, was a teenager when that album came out, and I thrashed it to death. Absolutely loved it. So I was really rapt to see it come out on CD. How do you feel about the reissue of that?
I think it's great. Normally when I get records, I keep them sealed and throw them straight in the trunk. So I haven't listened to it. But knowing Ernie and the guys involved, I'm sure they would have done a good job. The guys at Aztec, the packaging's better, I think, than the original one. Oh,
they do a marvellous job indeed.
Yeah, they're terrific guys, and they're all on the up and up. And I was glad that it came out, because it was sold gold. It sold 3 times more than actually nearly 3 times more than the Dingoes did initially.
Well, it just seemed to have hit single after hit single. I think, was there 5 singles off that?
There was about 4 or 5. I think a couple were sort of hits of some sort. But we sort of ran out after that, and because we were touring so full on, that I ended up with nothing much to say, and I was moving away again at the end of it.
Well, it was such a big band.
I don't stay on, even though I do have a roots base to what I do. I might go off on a total tangent. I figure we're only here once, so.
Indeed.
And I don't want to have. At this point in my life, I just want to do what I want to do. Basically, that's it. And I don't care if people don't like it or not. And I'm not out there to perpetuate my name. And the way I figure it is this way: you do your best work you can, and somewhere along the line, you might be dead. Somebody will come across and go, "Gee, this guy's really good." But I was thinking the other day about songwriters, singer-songwriters, and how the media push certain people, and then other ones that I know don't get a look in that are better. And then I started thinking about the last century, and I realised who the greatest singer-songwriter last century was. And he owned last century, but he's never mentioned, which is Jack O'Hagan. Now, people will go, who's that?
I'm going to be with them because you've got me. I can't say I've ever heard his name.
Well, Jack O'Hagan played piano and sang and wrote songs. And he eventually became a transcriber of Alan's music in later years. But he wrote On the Road to Gundagai. There's a track floating back there on the road to Gundagai. He wrote Our Don Bradman.
Okay.
A song called Ginger Megs, another one called Forgotten, a whole stack of stuff. And he was big during the war. He was the voice of Australia. So that alone gives him the century.
Well, certainly all those tunes are iconic tunes, but like you say, his name is...
Right, all the others are media, commercial, peripheral people.
Mm.
He's Other ones that would come close are some people in the country scene, like the Gordon Parsons and Slim and some of his pals. Because we work in the latter part of the 20th century, we tend to think of people's names, and they're not the greatest. That guy was. He owned that century, really, and through the most desperate times and dangerous times of this country during that century.
I guess
everybody else is a wuss.
I guess it's also a generational thing, but also a media thing. Back in those days, the music wasn't as accessible and easily to pass on as it is now, I guess. And unless, I guess in my case, unless my folks sort of were into that, it sort of to an extent disappeared. It's only guys like you that have the knowledge that keep it alive.
Oh, it's still there. It's still in all the archives and all
but
that.
hidden away.
But it's not thrust down your throat. And sometimes when you live in a period, certain artists are thrust down your throats because they got the media savvy for that time. But then later on, when everything's looked at in a more balanced fashion, other names that perhaps didn't get as much recognition in that time, their voices become bigger.
Indeed, interesting indeed.
Yeah, so, somebody could be pushed in a certain decade, and then 2 decades later, it's knock, who's there? Never heard of you.
A fickle world indeed it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Broderick, thank you so much for giving me some of your time. It's a great pleasure to say hello.
My pleasure too.
And I cannot recommend Unknown Country enough. When I first heard a couple of tunes off it, my ears pricked up, and I think is most of your back catalogues still available on your website?
Some of it is, and if you can go on the website and email me, and I always answer my emails. I'm one of those. I get really embarrassed if I don't sort of tell us, so like you.
not too many people do it themselves these days. They have a publicist to do such things.
Well, that would be nice in some areas, just to get rid of all these people trying to sell me astrology courses or something. But
well, it's nice for the people that know and love your music that you do that. Indeed, it is.
Thanks, man.
Just before we finish up, can I get you to do a quick tag for me?
Yep.
My program is called Sitting in a Bar in Adelaide.
Oh, okay.
If you could do me something like, this is Broderick Smith and you're listening to blah blah blah, or be as inventive as you like.
How are you? This is Broderick Smith. I'm sitting in a bar in Adelaide here, and I'm having my normal glass of Ribena.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you, mate. I'll edit this up, and it streams on the net every week. So once it's done that, people can download it. So I can send you a link, and you can have a listen.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
God bless.
Have a great day. See ya. Bye bye.